Rob Gronkowski and Antonio Brown combined for 151 targets in 2021. Who is getting the largest share of those targets in 2022? A, there'll be more for Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. B, it's going to Russell Gage. C, Julio Jones. Or D, the tight ends. Kyle Rudolph, Cameron Brate, Cade Otton. Some sort of combination of those veterans and youngsters. What do you guys think? Where are the targets going with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers?
I was very excited for Russell Gage pretty much throughout the entire offseason. I think he is underrated. Underrated might not be the right word for it, but underappreciated for what he can do. And I thought he was going to do really good in the system. And then they went out and signed Julio Jones. I still think Gage is going to be better than Julio this year. I think Julio is winding down pretty strongly. But I think that at least early on, some of those targets, which I assume were going to go to Gage, are going to go to Jones instead.
We all saw, I think we were all tweeting out the one highlight yesterday from camp, Julio running a route. It looked like me pushing a wheelbarrow running through this route. And I mean, Julio's a Hall of Famer probably, but it doesn't look like there's a lot left. I'm going to go with the tight ends. I saw Kyle Rudolph's name, and you just mentioned it, and my glasses almost fell off that Kyle Rudolph is on the Buccaneers roster right now. But the tight ends mixed with Scotty Miller, mixed with that kid Johnson, and all of those that soup of other receivers that they have there. I think that's going to absorb most of what we saw from Gronk and from AB last year.
Although some of those guys won't make the team. They have too many wide receivers. Scotty Miller may not make the team because there's Brashad Perriman also.
Perriman won't make the team. Between
Perriman, Johnson, and Miller, someone's not making it.
Perriman will not make the team. It's going to probably be Johnson and Miller. I see Darden is in there too, but maybe Darden makes it in place.
Darden has the special teams. They need him for returns, I think. Yeah. I think it's going to be Russell Gage that gets most of those targets. I do think there'll be a good amount of Julio Jones. I think as much as I think Julio Jones is probably cooked, I wouldn't want to take one video of one target as evidence for that. I don't think they're going to use a lot of tight end. There wasn't a lot of Cameron Brate last year in the games where Gronk was hurt. So I don't think they're suddenly going to be using a lot of Cameron Brate. So I think it's going to be Russell Gage, who is a good addition to this offense, which is our number one projected offense. So let's talk about our Tampa Bay Buccaneers projections. They project as the number one offense. And because offense has a larger range of projections than defense does, and is easier to predict than defense, being the number one offense makes them the number two projected team overall, even though their defense and special teams are projected to be slightly below average. This is where I say, like I have on all of these shows talking about Football Outsiders Almanac, that our projections are historically very conservative and very grouped around 8.5, and that they were even more conservative this year than usual. So please do not take the 10.0 mean wins as a suggestion that you bet under Tampa Bay 11.5 in Vegas, because Tampa Bay is still our number two team this year behind Buffalo and our number one team in the NFC, and we feel very strongly that they're going to be a very good team. I mean, there's always that possibility. It's been there every year. There is that possibility that this is the year Father Time finally claims Brady. I've given up on it. Like, it's going to happen when he's 63 years old or something. I don't know.
It's gambler's fallacy at this point. As somebody who rolled the dice on, this is probably Brady's decline year. I think I started doing that in 2013 or something like that. It's gambler's fallacy at this point. When you actually see evidence of it, then you start thinking about it. Until then, he can, especially when he gets these loaded receiving cores and like this offensive line, even with the loss of the center, has like all this strength. He's got all these extra opportunities in place to not necessarily fall off in a way that we can say.
I love that he's breaking all the age records, even going back to the 1920s when football was like 11 guys who knew each other showing up on game day. Mm-hmm. If he starts in week 18, he will officially be the oldest starting quarterback in NFL history, beating the 1921 Columbus Panhandles and Joe Nesson.
I will say that the defensive projection is interesting because they had a high number of takeaways last year, so it sees a little bit of decline there. But this defense has been really good for a couple of years, and it doesn't like some of the lost talent, like the safety whose name suddenly escapes me, Jermaine Whitehead, and losing Jason Pierre-Paul. But the fact is they had players in reserve to replace those guys. So, right, like the projection system sees those players leaving, But we know that like Tryon Shoyinka was taken in the first round last year specifically to replace Jason Pierre-Paul when the time came for Pierre-Paul to leave. And we know they've got Mike Edwards and they signed Keanu Neal. And so they've got they've got Logan Ryan who could play safety. Like they've got depth. So I feel like the defense should even be better than our projections have it.
The way I was thinking about it as I was writing it is that the Bucs do have a lot of question marks. There's also have potential answers to every single one of those questions. They were ready and were prepared for this moment. Whether those will work or not, we'll have to wait and see. But it's not like, oh no, we have no idea what we're doing now at outside linebacker, whatever. They have guys who are all ready to come up.
A lot of the question marks is this guy done? Is that guy done?
Yeah.
Or is this guy a little more hurt? It's never like, could this guy play at all? It's not, There's not any question along those lines.
Like Akeem Hicks is not prime Akeem Hicks anymore, but he's a good addition. And they've got Logan Hall, who they drafted in the second round. If Akeem Hicks sucks, they've got Logan Hall to come into the lineup. So it's like there's some depth here. It's a well-built team. Switching over back to offense, what exactly does Shaq Mason bring to the table for the Bucs? I think Shaq Mason is still an above-average guard in the NFL. His strength is definitely run blocking rather than pass blocking, and he's probably not as good as Marpet was, but he's good.
He could be a force in that turn. Some of those second and eights that they seem to want to put Brady in the second and sixes and things like that.
Some of that, I wonder if it's what happens with Todd Bowles, because they are switching to a defensive-oriented head coach, and we know so many defensive-oriented head coaches are like, let's run the ball, trust my defense, and how much changes about the offense. But I feel like with Brady at quarterback, not a lot changes about the offense because Brady goes, no, I want to do it this way, and then that's the way you do it.
Right.
Provided he comes back from vacation at a certain point.
Especially with Byron Leftwich still being, in place there. This is not like this issue with the Saints where I'm worried about them changing from the offensive head coach with, the question marks, the quarterback. I have no doubt that the Buccaneers head coach is really Tom Brady. I mean, the Buccaneers are doing what Brady wants, at least offensively, and they're going to be just fine.
There's also been this back and forth about, is Godwin, Godwin's practicing, is Godwin going to start the season, or is Godwin going to be out for a couple games, or whatever. They'll survive. If they don't have Chris Godwin for 3 or 4 games, they'll be fine.
In terms of Alex Kappa, they brought in, they drafted Gadecki at guard, who is a pretty good prospect. They got Aaron, I think his name is Aaron Stinney out there now. Yep. That's not the strongest 1-2 punch, especially when you have questions at center as well. So that there is a little bit of a weak link in there, but that's what you get. It's not a perfect roster by any stretch of the imagination. It's still a very strong offensive line if you look at the talent across the board, particularly at the tackles.
I was surprised. There was a lot of talk about J.C. Tretter when the injury to Jensen happened, and nobody's gone out. In San Francisco also, there was talk about J.C. Tretter. Nobody has gone out and signed J.C. Tretter. The dude still plays.
Someone asked me on a radio show if he's being blackballed for being the president of the union. First of all, he's a moderate. What did he do? What did he got them to sign the contract that gave Goodell all the power of God that he wanted there. So I can't necessarily see that. And secondly, somebody's got to be the president of the union.
I would hope that that's not what's going on because, J.C. Tretter is still a good player, and there are teams out there that need center help. And honestly, this is one of them because I don't know what Robert Haynes, he was a 3rd-round pick a year ago, so we haven't seen a lot from him, and they seem to trust him, but then there's nothing behind him. So what happens? There was a scare a couple of days ago where he had cramps or something, and they were scared he had some kind of leg injury, and then it was like, oh, God, Tampa Bay's got nothing behind it. Do you have any fun props for us about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers other than their usual over-under of 11.5?
Yes. Give me a second here to pull them up. Here we go. Alternate win totals. Now, again, these are available at any of your favorite sports books. You look around and you'll see alternate win totals. Over 12.5 wins. Over 12.5 wins at plus 195.
I think I would take that. When you have 2 games against the Falcons and Panthers, that really does help there. The schedule's not so incredibly tough that I'm afraid of it, and we have the best offense in the league, and just keep going up when you have the best offense.
I think I would stay away from it because of my sort of natural conservatism about things kind of grouping towards 500. 12.5 is a lot, but it's not ridiculous for plus 195 to think that's like a 30. You're basically betting that they have a 33% chance of going over 12.5. It's not ridiculous at all.
Yeah, I think of that like in for a penny, in for the pound, because the regular number is so high anyway. You're like buying, you're buying plus 195 for one more win. I could see
That's true, actually. If you're going to go at 11.5 for whatever it is, even or whatever, like you might as well do the 12.5 for plus 195.
Right. So if we're kind of bullish on that, we probably have no interest in under 10.5 at plus 165.
Yeah, no. That's
I mean, our simulation has interest in it.
Yeah.
But I fully admit, like, I need to do work on the simulation. It's too conservative.
I call these the your cousin from Boston props here, not to give any non-sponsors a moment here, but because we all know all the best Buccaneers fans are from in Boston. So Tom Brady over 55.5 regular season touchdown passes. In other words, breaks the record. So Tom Brady over 55.5 touchdown passes at plus 1,800.
If you're a Brady fan, that would be a fun. That would be a fun one to root for.
I'm going to go no on that one. Eventually, it's going to be bad. It's going to happen eventually.
I don't think it's likely. There haven't been a lot of guys going over 50, and to go over 55 is not. They'll pull him out of the 18th game if nothing else.
That's a good point. That could be the difference. Tampa Bay Buccaneers to go 17-0 in the regular season and win the Super Bowl. Perfect season at plus 8,000.
I'd rather be on the Brady 55 touchdowns because then at least he can have a bad day. If you have one bad day and you lose, there goes your bet. I wouldn't do it.
The funny thing is to take that and then they lose week 1 at Dallas, which is entirely plausible. So doesn't even get out of the opening week of the season.
That's a great example because it's like, oh, that sounds like a fun bet, and the Brady bet sounds like a fun bet, but that sounds like a bet that you could be, halftime the season opener. Like, well, I wasted that money, and that's not fun.
I'd have to look up the simulation, but my guess is that it's less than a 0.5% chance of Tampa Bay going undefeated in the regular season. And then the fact is a team that goes undefeated in the regular season has a less than even chance of winning the Super Bowl. Like, I know that sounds crazy because you think a team that goes undefeated in the regular season is going to be so dominant. But, I mean, the fact is that to then add to that 3 more wins, including one in a neutral, is tough.